first animate, like, I know, like, oh, you see, like, these people, like, wow, I want to animate like them or something like that. And then when you do it, you're like, oh man, it doesn't look anything like that. Because I've been there before, but like, as long as you keep practicing and doing it, you'll get better, trust me. I did not start off like how I am now. I've improved a lot, but like, I'm still not as good as I want to be. Or I've seen other people's animations and I'm just like, wow, that looks really good. Like, I want to be like that good. So I'm still like trying to work up to be better at animating and stuff. Okay, with that being said, I hope that if you ever see somebody who animates and you think, oh, I'm never gonna be that good, you will, trust me. It just takes some time and effort that you have to put into it if you want to become better at something, and just practice for the most part. Animation that I recorded, like the progress of doing, isn't like one where there's like any expressions that are animated or like eyes and mouth and stuff like that, because this is the one from the Pumpkin Night edit. I'll probably show it at the beginning, the edit or whatever, or the animation. It's just like body movement basically and hair movement. I've tried multiple times to record, like when I was doing my Dorian edit, to see if I could record it, but like right when I was recording, it crashed my After Effects and like I lost all my progress to one of the animations, so I couldn't record for that one. I don't know why it wasn't working, but yeah, this one's just for general movement and stuff like that. Okay, so I'll try to explain my best. Okay, so yeah, usually when I mask, make sure you consider that, like, say if you're masking, there's like a picture of, I don't know, like right here, I'm masking the hair, but I also masked the neck. The neck would have to be masked first, and then the hair would be masked in another layer, which will be above the layer of the neck, because it's in the image over the neck, not below it. So yeah, that should make sense. I don't know. So basically just take into consideration like where a certain aspect of the drawing or image goes. And I think I like masked for quite a while here. Yeah, for this I masked a lot of things. When you mask the head, make sure not to just like mask like the parts of the head that are like the skin tone. You want to also mask portions of it that are also like the hair, because you will, after you mask, you're gonna have to recolor a bunch of stuff. Like for now, it's like you're getting the hair with the head, and like that's probably not gonna look right unless you color it, which you're gonna do after. So make sure you like also do like a mask around it, like what I was doing right here. Like I didn't just go on the white parts, I also like masked on the hair. Also, sometimes when you mask things, you're just gonna have to, like, say the arm is like, part of the arm is covered with the hair or something, and you don't know, like, okay, the arm is supposed to go this way, but I don't know where I'm supposed to mask for it because the hair is covering the part that I want to mask. You're just gonna have to use where you relatively think that it would be. It helps if, I guess, you draw stuff and you're like you're an art type of person, then you're just like, oh yeah, it'd be right here, proportions, blah blah blah. But you could still do it even if you don't do art and stuff like that. You just kind of guess where you think the arm is, or where you think any of the whatever you're trying to mask is. Okay, so usually when you mask hair, it depends on how you want it, if you even want to animate the hair, or if you want to animate just the whole thing together, or certain strands separately. So in this, I wanted to have like one big portion of hair and then have like a few strands that are animated, so that I wouldn't have to animate like too much, because when I know some people use like presets for hair that they just like slap on and stuff like that, and I used to use that, but I went back to my old method of just animating it like one by one, and like going in and adding like keyframes and stuff. But I'll get to that part later because we're still on like the masking part. So basically all I'm doing here is just getting the bigger portion of the hair that I wanted. So because I'm doing the bigger portion first, which means the reason why I'm doing that is because there's also these 2 layers that I haven't masked yet at the top, the strands that I'll mask later, but of course they go on the top. As you can see in the image, that it's clear that they're on top of the bigger strand of hair. And then after that, I decided to do the bangs. So this one, same thing, just mask the bangs. Usually I put them in parts instead of one, but if you want, you could just mask them as one thing together. You could put, I say, like 2 masks in one layer, but I usually don't do that. But you could do that if you want to like save layer space or something, because I know like the layers will keep stacking and stacking, and like you'll have like, I don't know, like 60 layers for like one like 3-second animation or something. Okay, so now the coloring part. Okay, when you want to color a layer, what I usually do is I finish masking everything. After I finish masking what I want to have masked for parts that I need to animate, like I mask based on what I want to animate. After I do that, I go down all the layers and I go to like the very first few layers, which are like the bottom layers, and I double click the layer so that it brings up this transparent thing around it, like because it's masked. And what I do is then I click the paintbrush that's under the animation tab at the top left corner of the program, and it'll bring up, when I click on that, on the side, the panels on the side where there's like effects, align, and a bunch of other stuff, preview stuff, it'll bring up like a paint tab and a brush tab, and if they aren't big enough, just like go to the side, drag it up. It should like have an option where you can make it bigger, expanding it. You just expand it, and when you do that, all you have to do is take into consideration what colors are on your image and what you have to color in. So for this that I'm coloring in, I'm basically coloring the neck and the body. So what I have to color on this is basically the parts that I've masked before. So there's like a earring here that I masked, the ear, the hair that I masked as well, so I'm gonna color that in with white. So on the side, the paint panel, all you have to do, choose a brush size, depending on how big your image is. Choose a brush size, and then the paint panel, this is important. So where it says duration, make sure it's on constant. And when you're painting the image, make sure your marker, your time marker, is right at the very beginning of the layer, because if not, then it's gonna not start like the painting process right there. Say if you have it in the middle, anything before where your marker is will not have any of the stuff that you repainted. That's why you have to always have your timestamp thing right in the beginning. And then whatever color, so right here, I'm trying to paint the neck, and so I need white, so I'll just click on the square that's right here, or you can use the eyedropping tool to get the color you need, say if it's not something simple as white. So once you have that, you can go to choose a brush size, and then you just go in and start coloring. Make sure you stay in the lines, because if you go out, it'll go out of the masking area and like include that in your thing if you don't color inside the lines. But I'm coloring everything that I don't need in this one image because I've already masked all these things. So if I color over it, it'll still be there because I've masked them out. And so in this one too, I masked out the arm earlier, so I'm gonna color the arm, and I've masked out the front like bow, or the tie of the bow right there in the front. So I'm gonna color in to make the bow disappear, and I'm just gonna color in what's not there. Basically just fill in. So right here, I'm coloring it white. And then right here, so right here, since I masked out the arm, I'm coloring it black at the way the image was drawn. The way the image is drawn has like a shadow because the arm was over the body. It was like on the side, so of course it'd be shadowing there. So I just decided to like easily just color it black because the arm is still going to be over it, but it's just going to be moving. And then right here, I'm making the bow disappear by just coloring the colors of like the shirt that the bow is on top of. And the coloring does not have to be perfect because when you do add the movement and transitions and stuff to the animation, you won't be able to even tell the difference of like, oh, that person colored that on there. I could totally see it. Like you won't even be able to notice. Like maybe you'll know that, oh, I didn't color this right, but nobody will know unless you point it out. Because like right here, my coloring doesn't really match exactly, and it's kind of like too dark, but you could fix it like I'm doing right here, but you don't have to, because when you zoom out, you won't be able to see it. Okay, so when you're done with that, just click back to the tab, the composition preview tab, and then see how after I colored it, you can't even tell because of all the mask layers above it. So basically, I'm just going to be coloring in more stuff. Like this arm, I'm coloring in because it was missing, so. Okay, so the head. The head is one of like the most common things to animate and to color for animation. It's basically the same process as the other stuff, and since you masked out like the hair that's already there, you just color over the stuff that you've already masked. So I won't be coloring the eye or the eyebrows because I did not mask those things out. I'd just be coloring the hair and the bow that's on the head because I masked those out. Actually, no, wait. I'm pretty sure I already did I masked out the eyebrow. Oh yeah, and then if you need to, what I did here is I went back to brushes and chose a smaller brush so that I could zoom in and then go in and fill in smaller spaces so that way I won't like color over small details that I still need to have there. Okay, so for this. So I realized that after I masked this portion of the hair out, that I'm pretty sure I forgot to mask the other strands of hair that I was gonna mask out, so I had to go back and redo it. You know, this might happen all the time, but it's okay because you could just go back and do it real quick. So I'm masking out the hair that I did not mask and I was supposed to, and then I'm gonna color in the bigger strand of hair. So since I masked those two strands that are on top of the hair, so coloring something like this might be hard because it's in such like detail that you're just like, how am I supposed to color exactly the way they did? You don't have to. Just all you have to do is color it the colors that are close to it. Like what I'm doing here is I'm getting like the different shades of gray and stuff that are on the image, and I'm just coloring it those colors because like I'm doing black and stuff like that. Again, it looks like, doesn't look that great right now, but once you yeah, and then I have to color in the bow as well. But once you have it like that, like it looks kind of weird right now, like you can't really tell. But once you have it in motion and it's moving and you have all the other stuff like the coloring and then the transitions and stuff like that, you can't see the coloring. Like right now I zoomed out, you can't really tell that much. So when you color things, it doesn't have to be exactly the way they colored it. Like it could just be like simple, like just colors. Same colors, but like simple coloring. Just like color one solid thing and you don't have to add too much detail to it. Unless of course it's going to be like an obvious part of what you're animating, then you're probably going to have to go back and kind of make it detailed. Okay, so this is when I started so this point I finished all the coloring of stuff, and what I was going to do was I'm going to start animating right now, like actually like adding the movement and stuff. This part I get like really picky with. Like it's barely like 30 minutes into the video and I haven't even, like I'm barely starting the animation, and this video is literally an hour and 30 minutes long. So it literally took me an hour to get the motions the way I wanted them to. So right here what I'm doing is when you animate stuff, there's certain layers that you need to keep together when you're animating because they move together. Like you can't have like one move and then the other not, because they're supposed to move together and in sync. So what I do is I go to layer, new, and then null object, and I click on it and it'll generate like this. I think it's red for After Effects. I have an old version of After Effects, so I don't know if it's still the same. It's like a red layer. I'll drag it down to the top of all of the layers that I'm animating, and I'll like cut it to size to fit the same length as all the photos I have. And what I'll do is I'll get all the layers that I want to be moved together, and I usually highlight all of the layers that I want on the null object, and once I highlight them, I drag this little spirally thing, and there's like a line that pops up. I drag that over to the null layer, and I drag it and then drop it on top, and then what it will do, it'll attach all of those layers I highlighted to the null object. It's a quick way to do it instead of going one by one and attaching them to the null layer. So after I do that, I click on the null layer and I go up to the top left corner, and right by where like that video camera icon is, I go to the one next to it. It's like a box with like 4 triangles pointing in different directions. I click on that, and that tool is there so you can move the anchor point of whatever layer you have clicked on. So right now I have the null layer clicked on, and I'm moving the anchor point to where her head is, because all of the layers that I added to this null layer are all of the layers that are on the head, because I want all of those layers to move at once, because they're all attached to the head, so they have to move together. Because if I do not have them on one null layer, then they're all going to move separately and you're not supposed to. So I attach those. I move the anchor point to where I want the movement to originate from. So like under the ear where the jaw is where I want her to move her head. So that's going to be the anchor point for it. And usually when I do head movement, I usually use rotation. And I just like, you could just mess with this like however much you want it to move or rotate. It's up to you, honestly. It's all like preference for the most part with like movement and stuff. But you see how when I move it, all of the layers that I masked will move together with the head because they're all attached to the layer. Which is why I'm adding these keyframes on rotation to the null layer, because these are all attached to it. This is something extra that you could do. So if you want, when you add these keyframes, you can add, well, when you add the keyframes, it will give you a graph anyways. And make sure to always set your keyframes to easy ease by highlighting all the keyframes that are on your layer and pressing F9, or you can right click and just go down to where it says easy ease, and then it'll make them easy ease, which looks like an hourglass shape. And once you do that, then you could do the graph. I'm sure you guys know how to do I'm sure you guys know how to do this, because like that's what you usually do with transitions and stuff. But then it'll bring up the graph, and usually when I graph like the movement, I don't pull it up all the way. I make this weird like mountain shape. It goes like, it's steep in the beginning, like it's really steep, and then it goes up, and then it like gradually goes down. So it's not like super sharp, like a really sharp graph, but it makes the movement fast in the beginning. And you could put these keyframes on your null object wherever you want them to be, because it'll determine how fast the movement is. Oh yeah, and usually when I'm animating, since I have multiple different pictures and images, there's like on the timeline, there's this tab thingy that you can drag. They're like orange things on the sides, and all you do is click on the orange parts of each side and drag it, and that'll just change the preview, what you're previewing, like the size of what you're previewing. So I'm changing it so that I can only preview what I want to preview. So in this case, the animation that I'm doing, so I'm just dragging it. And so for my After Effects, I have to go to composition and then preview, and then click RAM preview to have it in like the right frame rate and actually see the preview. But I know for newer After Effects, all you have to do is click the double space and it'll preview it for you. This is what I usually do when I animate. I just keep previewing, of course, what it looks like, and then changing it if I don't like it. So I didn't like how fast it went, so I just went ahead and went back to the graph and changed it a little bit. Made it less sharp. So instead I deleted one of the keyframes to make it only 2 keyframes, so that way the movement is slower. So I decided to preview what it looked like again. And you can do this how many times you want, it doesn't really matter. For some reason, like, my screen recording's like super laggy, so sorry if it's like you can't really tell what it looks like when I'm previewing it. I think that's why I was on like a low quality, because like the frames per second are like too much for the recording. Okay, so for this part. Okay, so for hair. When I animate hair, I use the puppet pin tool. So basically it's like this really weird tool that's included in After Effects that you're probably thinking like, oh, what the heck is this? You've seen it so many times, you're like, I don't even know what this does. But basically it's at the top panel where all your stuff is, like where your cursor is, your magnifying glass, your 3D camera options, your masking options, your text options, and your paint tool, and all this other stuff. And so you just click on the puppet tool. It's like a, my god, what are they called? the thumbtack. It's like a thumbtack, and you click on it. And when you click on it, make sure you are also clicked on whatever layer you're going to use it on. So I have layer 13 clicked on, which is one of the masked hair strands. And when I click on the puppet pin tool, my mask will look like it disappeared, but it's actually still there. It's just that when you do the pin tool, it'll not show the mask. And what you're going to do is when you're animating the hair, you're going to click on your hair. When you're using the pin tool, you're going to put down 3 points. So one at the top of the hair strand, one in the middle of the hair strand, and one at the end of the hair strand, so it's like evenly spaced out. And so when you do this, what you're going to be able to do, it's basically putting anchor points down on the hair, so it's creating anchor points on each part of the hair wherever you're putting them on. Usually you do only 3, as I said, and one in the top, one in the middle, and one in the bottom, so it's evenly spaced out. And what you're going to have to do, so when I animate hair, I usually animate it after I do the head because the hair movement depends on how you animate the head. Because you're going to have to take into consideration how the human body moves and how realistic you want this to be, or if you just want this to be like just a simple animation and like as long as it moves it's fine. Like it doesn't matter, whatever you want, that's fine. But when I do it, I usually have to take into consideration like how I think that hair strands move when like the head moves. So usually if the head is moving upwards, the hair strand will be moving in the opposite direction. And what you're gonna have to do when you're doing the hair strands is have your timestamp or the oh my god, I don't know what it's called. The times, not the time, I think it's the timestamp. The timestamp marker. Have the timestamp marker in the beginning of the masked hair strand, so that way, because that's where your animation will start. So when you have it there, you just move it a little bit to the side, and then what you do is you go to the 3 points that you made with the puppet pin tool, and the very bottom point that you made at the edge of the hair strand, you move it in whatever way you want. You can experiment with this however you want, but in my situation, since I made the head go from looking down to going up, I have to move it in the opposite direction of where the head is actually moving. And so I made multiple keyframes. I did about 5 keyframes in this. You don't have to do that many, but it just depends on the length of the clip, how fast you want it to go, and like how many times you want the hair strand to move. So you see how right here, the head is moving up, but the hair is a little bit faster than the head, but like it begins by starting off by going the opposite direction, but then it goes the same direction, but then back the opposite direction, then back up. So it's kind of like it's like a flowing in the wind effect, even if there isn't wind. So I didn't really like how fast it was, so I decided to space out the keyframes to make it start fast, but ends at a slower rate. So it's kind of a little bit more realistic looking, I guess. You can't really see in the preview what it looks like because my screen recording is really slow. So I decided to add a rotation keyframe to the head again, to the null layer where everything's attached to it. But I'm just changing it based on preference, like what I want to have in the animation or how I want it to look. So it just depends on what you want, that you could change whatever you want. So I was changing like the graph and stuff like that. Okay, and then I did the next hair strand layer. I did the same thing. I clicked on the puppet pin tool, added the 3 pins onto the hair, and then I made sure my timestamp marker was at the beginning of the clip, and then I went to the next part where I wanted the next movement to be. Then I just moved the bottom marker, the bottom stamp or pin that I added, and I moved it either the opposite direction or the same direction. Now, when you have another hair strand, you don't have to move it like in the same direction as the first hair strand that you did. Like, you can move it in the opposite direction, going with the head movement. Usually I do a few that are going the same direction and then a few that are going the opposite direction, just to have like a variety. But it just depends on what you want again. And then I did the 3rd strand of hair where I did the same thing. I clicked on the puppet pin tool, added the pins to the hair, one at the top, one in the middle, one at the bottom, so it's evenly spaced out. I had the timestamp marker right in the beginning of the masked layer. I went to the next part where I wanted the next movement to be. It made it its own keyframe right when I moved the bottom pin, so you don't have to go back, add a keyframe yourself. It'll move automatically once you move the pin. And this one I went in the same direction as the first hair strand. As the second strand that I did, I went in a different direction than these other 2. And then I decided to do the bigger. I decided to do the bigger strand of hair, which is like a bigger portion of the hair. And I added the same 3 keyframes on the hair, so one at the top part, which is like the base of the hair, one in the middle part of the hair, and the one at the bottom part of the hair. And when I did that, I also added some more pins on parts of the hair that I just wanted to anchor down so they wouldn't move, because if you don't add pins in certain areas that you don't want to move, sometimes it will move and it doesn't look right. So I just added those just in case it moved when I didn't want it to. So I did the same thing. I added the movement and stuff. And when I finished, I decided to do the same thing for the earring. I went to the layer, clicked on it, clicked on the puppet pin tool, added the pins to it. For this one, I believe I added three pins to it because it was already in like a weird motion, because it's also attached to the head, so it was also moving, but it was like stiff when it was moving with the head movement. So I had to add 3 keyframes because when I bent it, it didn't look right. It was kind of bent itself without like a third without a third pin. So right here, this is when I added a 3rd pin. But I had to go, okay, if you add another pin after you're done adding pins, but you want to go back, make sure you have your timestamp marker in the beginning of the layer, so that it adds it to the beginning and not the middle, because then if you don't, then it'll do the same thing like with the coloring. It'll start your movement wherever your marker is. So after that, for this one, I'm going to have to move both the second pin, the middle pin, and the bottom pin, because it has to be moved, but so I keep previewing it, but like for some, again, it's probably not gonna look right. But that's how it looked so far. So I previewed it again to see what it looks like with the movement. As you can see, the earring moves in the opposite direction as the head, but then it goes back with the same movement as the head, but then goes back again. This is just based on like what I think that it would look like. And again, I will go back and like fix it if I don't like it, because sometimes the movements are either like too fast or I just don't like the way it looks. So then after I fixed whatever, I looked back at it and I was like, okay, that's fine. The earring looks okay now. And then I went back because I didn't like how the hair movement looked. So I went to go change some of the pins, the movement of the pins on the hair, the bigger strand of the hair. I just went back and spaced it out a little bit more so that way parts of it are faster in the beginning, since her head moves more in the beginning, more faster in the beginning. And then towards the end it kind of like just slows down, so then everything else should slow down with it. And then I just brand previewed it. And then I did like the final strands of hair finally. These ones, again, you just click on the puppet tool, add the 3 pins, one at the top, one in the middle, one at the bottom, so it's evenly spaced out. And you move it accordingly to however you think that the hair would flow. So it just depends, but if you want it to, I guess, look like my animations, you could just do it, I guess, kind of in a similar way that I'm doing it on the screen right now. So when I did this, I also did the bow, like movement of the bow, because the bow is on top of the head and the head's moving, of course. So I added, again, pin tools, puppet pin tools to the bow. But for this one, only the top of the bow will be moving. So I added about 4 pins to the bow. So one at the bottom, as like one at the base of the bow, like the headband part of it, one at the, maybe a little bit at the top of it, and then 2 right there, because the 3 that are on the band are the ones that I do not want moving, but it'll keep the masked part there. So the ones that you are going to be moving and making keyframes of, those will be the moving parts. The other pins that you don't touch at all are just there to keep the rest of the mask in place while the other part of the mask is moving. So it's just moving the top part wherever the pin is. It's just moving the top part of the bow and nothing else, because I have those other pins there to keep it down. And so that's what it looks like with the bow movement and stuff like that. So I just went back and like fixed a few things. Okay, but after that I finished all the movement that was on the head and attached to the head and stuff like that. So I decided to animate a few of the other layers that I had. And so right here I decided to animate part of the body. And I'm just putting down pins where I don't want it to move and pins that I want to move, so that there's movement in that area. So I put a pin on the neck because I want the neck to move, but I put 2 pins underneath the neck, which is where like the shoulders are, because I don't want that part to move, but I just want the neck to move. Same thing with the body part. The part of the body at the bottom, like I put 4 pins so that way that part of the body just stays still. I think I do move it like a little bit maybe, but like I just want the neck to be moved for the most part. So for this, I just based it off of the movement of the head. And I just do the same thing that I did with like the hair strands. I'll start at the beginning, make sure all the pins are added at the beginning of the mask, and then I'll add the keyframe wherever I want the movement to be. So in this case, all the way at the end of the clip, I'll add the movement. And oh yeah, one thing I forgot to point out. Oh my god. Okay, one thing I forgot to point out is that when you do the puppet pins, make sure you open your effects panel on the layer and you open the puppet layer. You open the mesh. It'll say mesh 1, mesh 2. You expand that layer and then it'll say deform, and you expand that layer, and there's a bunch of like puppet pins there. You expand every puppet pin and you highlight every single puppet pin that's on there. Highlight every puppet pin on there and then press F9 to make all of them easy ease, because it'll make it smoother. It'll make all the animation smoother as long as you click easy ease and change it to easy ease, so it looks like the keyframes look like hourglasses. So now I'm like just looking at a preview of it, of how the neck movement looks with everything else. And it looks kind of odd right here, but so I decided to move the other puppet pins that are on the body just to see what it would look like if I were to add more motion to it. And right now it looks really weird by itself, and it looks kind of odd and doesn't look natural at all. And I do fix that a few times. And when I do that, after I like whatever I did, then I'll just go to the next thing. So right now, the arm, I'll do the same thing. Add the puppet pins to the top, the middle, and the bottom. This one, for this one, usually it's just adding puppet pin tools to whatever joints or wherever you think the joints are, or where the joints should be. But for this, I'm adding 2 because I'm not going to have any elbow movement, because if I added a 3rd one in the middle, that would relatively be where her elbow would be, but I didn't want her to bend her arm. So, and then again, I'm moving the puppet pin tools based off of the head movement and the neck movement. So it just depends on how you want the animation movement to flow. So like animating stuff is kind of like experimental in a way, because you're trying to move it in a way that you want it to move, but look kind of, I guess, natural in a way. But sometimes you want like more like straightforward animations, or more bouncy animations, or more like lifelike animations, more unrealistic animations. It just depends on the person too, because some take more time than others, and then some just don't take as much time to do because they're just easier to do. So right here, the arm looks really weird when it's moving. It's like not flowing the way I want it to. So what I decided to do was I added a 3rd keyframe, added a 3rd puppet pin into the mix of things, just to like have different parts of it move more than the others. So instead of doing it based off of the movement of the head, I decided to do it contrasting the way the body was moving. So if the body was moving inwards, the arm would move outwards, or like do the opposite of what it was doing. when I do like animations and stuff like this, I like doing like kind of like bouncy animations. Like, not, I don't know if you'd consider like maybe like a bit of over exaggeration maybe, but like there's this like bouncy fluidity to the movement. So I'm gonna preview the way that it looks. So again, the arm looks kind of weird the way it's moving. It's like not moving naturally. It looks like the way the hair is moving in a way. It's like flowing weird. So I keep adjusting this because I just don't like the way that it looks. And so I moved things around again, and I'm previewing it again to see how it looks. So as you can see in the preview, it's like moving the opposite direction of where the body's moving, but then moving the same. So this is more like, this is when I decided, okay, that's fine. That looks alright. It has like a weird like bouncy motion to it. I'll leave it at that. And so once I finished that, I kind of wanted the whole body to move into position together so that it wasn't as stiff. So I decided to go to layer again and create another null object. But this time I decided to attach every one of the layers of the one specific animation I'm doing. So the animation of the girl, I'm attaching all of the layers I masked out of her to this one. Even the null layer that I did before, I'm attaching it. So I'm attaching the null object, the first null layer, to the second null one that I'm doing right now. So that way it includes the head movement. And I'm not changing any of the other like things that I put on null 1. I'm not changing those null 1 layers to be null 2 because I already put the null 1 layer itself to be attached to null 2. So whatever layers that say that they're not on anything, it says like none, those are the layers that you're going to attach to null 2. So like just for me though, it was just like the girl that I was doing right now. So like her body wasn't attached to anything, her arm wasn't attached to any layer at all. So I added those to null 2. And then after I did that, I went back to the top where the null layer was, the second one that I just created, and I again went to change the anchor point of where I wanted the movement to originate from, so towards the bottom of the body. So if I had it maybe rotate in, the movement would originate from the bottom like how it is right now. So in this, when I did this, for some reason the null 1 layer was not attached to it, and I noticed this. So I went back to attach the first null layer because as you can see when I moved it, the head wasn't moving with it. So I had to, right here I made the mistake again because I accidentally attached null 2 to null 1 when the null layer 1 was supposed to be attached to null 2. And so I fixed it. And once I added it to null 2, everything moved together so that nothing was separate, so that I could create like an overall body motion. So for this, I just opened up rotate. I rotated it based off whatever my preference was. And then of course the anchor point's gonna basically tell you where the movement is originating from. So I decided to just do, usually when I do movements, I will do like rotations or positions. I'll go positive, negative, positive, or negative, positive, negative. So it's like a back and forth, like a pattern basically. Like it's like, oh, -4, and then I go +5, and then -3. So that way it like starts, it's like a one movement this way, one movement to the right, and then one movement to the left, and then a little bit more to the right again. So it creates like a bouncy effect. That's at least how I do the animations. I also decided to add a position keyframes, just to add some more movement to it. This one I added 4 instead to contrast the rotation movements. And usually I space out the keyframes based on how fast I want the movement to be. And usually I go from the beginning, I have the keyframes more close together so that it's faster. And then towards the end of the clips or layers, I have it more spread out so that it's slower because it goes from fast to slow. And so I'm previewing it again. And so I like the way that it moves, so I was like, oh, okay, that's good. Because then when you just do that, like simple like keyframes will like make a big difference in so many things. And right here, I noticed that I never attached the bow that's on her shirt to any of the null layers that I was supposed to. So I had to go back and attach it. Also, it might be hard to find some layers because like they're all named the same since they're copies of each other. But since I didn't add it at first, I have to go back and drag it to like where it's supposed to be and then attach it. So for this, I forgot to add movement to the bow as well. So what I did, I just added the puppet pin tools like I usually do. One at the top where the base of it was, which is the part I did not want to move, and then 2 on each strands of the bow because I wanted to move each strand separately. And then I just went ahead and went to whatever duration of the clip I wanted to move it at, and I did that. And then I went in, opened the puppet panel, the mesh one, and then the deform, and then I highlighted all the keyframes from the puppet pin tool and made it easy ease so that it's a smoother outcome for the animation. And then I previewed it again to see what it looks like, what it looked like. And so I liked how that came out, so I had to do the other one. So the second image I did, part of his face was cut off due to the fact that her face was in front of his, or like when it was drawn, it was on top of his, so you couldn't see the other part of his face. So I had to, I guess, like mask where I thought the rest of his face would be, which does not look good at all. And I was way more lazy with the second animation for this than the first one, but I did, of course, similar things where I added new objects and I moved it whatever way I wanted it to move. The hair I had more trouble with because I didn't mask it as well as I did for the other one, because I just gave up on the second part for it. But I moved it based on however I moved the girl, so in contrast, I moved it. So I guess when you animate things, you have to take into consideration how you think things move in real life, how you want it to move, and when you're done animating certain aspects of it and you're going to animate the next thing, you have to take into consideration what you animated before so that you do it to however you like. So I kept like changing it and stuff, so I had to like fix it. So I just again moved it to however I thought would work best. And I made a mistake of not going and coloring in his face because part of the girl's nose is there on his face, which I never colored in, which I was supposed to, but I forgot. So I had to go in and double click and recolor it. One of the main problems though with if you're done coloring, or if you're done adding the puppet pin tools before you color, is that if you add the puppet pins before you color, it'll affect where the coloring moves, because I don't know why this is, but it's because it puts the puppet before the coloring part, so the coloring won't move with the puppet. So if that happens, you either have to start over with the puppet and just delete the paint, or you could move the paint to be behind the puppet, but sometimes it'll leave some weird, like, it'll leave a weird coloring behind where it's not supposed to be. But it'll still, like, it'll fix the problem, and it'll be colored where it's supposed to be. Just, there's gonna be, like, an excess coloring somewhere in your animation. So I decided to preview it again, just make sure it was to my liking, if I liked it, then I was like, okay, if not, I could just go back and fix it. And so I liked the way it looked, so at this point I was like about done with the animation. And this is barely like the first animation that I did for this edit, and it literally took me an hour and 30 minutes to do. And then I went ahead and I did the rest of them. Yeah, and that's all I got to record for that, because I think I did that one animation that day, and I don't know if I did another one, but I just didn't want to chance recording again, because last time I tried to record, it crashed my whole After Effects, and it didn't save anything, and it deleted all my progress. So yeah, I'll try to record an animation where I actually do the eyes and stuff like that, because I know that's like one of the most like popular types of like animation that people do. But yeah, that's basically how I do animation. Hopefully it made sense, because I confused myself trying to explain it. Like, I don't know, it's like really weird to explain. But yeah, so yeah, I hope it helps. And if you have any questions, just ask me. This is probably going to be posted on YouTube, and if it is, you guys could like comment something like, oh, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? And I could just help you explain it if you want. Or if you want, just DM me through Instagram, and I could help you too. I could send you like videos and stuff like that and help you if you want. Yeah. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this and understood anything that I said. Because again, I'm not sure if I made any sense, and I'm really sorry if I didn't, but I'm trying to make it make sense. Yeah.